The market was packed. People shouted over each other, hands waving in the air, trying to sell, trying to buy. But all eyes suddenly turned toward one thing: a cage. Inside, a woman. Her face was covered with a thick veil, her body wrapped in layers of old, tattered cloth. They said she was cursed. They said no man dared to marry her, not even for gold. "She brings misfortune," whispered a merchant. "They say her face is enough to make children cry," said another. And yet, the price set for her was 1 million. 1 million in pure silver. Everyone laughed. Who would pay that for her? But then, silence. A horse's steps echoed through the crowd. Men moved aside, women gasped. Children stared. Prince Elijah had arrived, dressed in white and gold, eyes sharp like a hawk, known for his victories in battle, but even more for his cold heart. He stepped down from his horse without a word, walked straight to the cage. He looked at the woman, then at the man who claimed to own her. 1 million? He asked. The man nodded, smug, certain no one would ever pay that. Prince Elijah pulled a small leather pouch from his coat, dropped it at the man's feet. Silver coins spilled into the dirt. The crowd gasped. "She's mine now," the prince said. The woman inside didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even look up. Prince Elijah unlocked the cage himself, held out his hand. She hesitated, then slowly reached out and placed her fingers in his. The crowd watched in disbelief as the prince walked away, leading her gently, step by step. No one could understand it. Why would a man like him want a woman like her? Later that night, inside the prince's carriage, she still hadn't spoken. She sat in the corner, eyes low, hands folded. He offered her food. She refused. He asked her name. Silence, but her hands trembled. Her shoulders tightened. Finally, he leaned forward. "I don't care what they say," he said softly. "No one's cursed. No one's worthless. Not in my eyes." A tear slid down her cheek. Still, she didn't lift her veil. They arrived at the prince's estate just before sunrise. The gates opened slowly, revealing a world the woman had never imagined. Lush gardens, fountains carved from white stone. Servants rushing to line up, confused by their prince's strange companion. "Prepare a room for her," Elijah ordered. "But, Your Highness," one of the maids began. He cut her off with a single glance. "I said, prepare a room." The woman followed in silence. Her name was Leah, but no one knew that yet. No one had ever cared to ask. That morning, she bathed in warm water for the first time in years. She touched the soap like it was a treasure, stared at the mirror but never removed her veil. The servants whispered, "She's hiding something. Maybe she really is cursed." Leah stayed quiet, but her eyes, they held storms. Elijah, too, was restless. He couldn't stop thinking about her. There was something in the way she carried herself, a stillness, a strength. He'd known women of beauty before, women who smiled at him with painted lips and empty hearts, but Leah, she hadn't even looked him in the eye. That afternoon, he found her sitting in the orchard, beneath an orange tree. He sat beside her. For a long moment they said nothing. Then he spoke. "You must think I'm a fool." She turned her head slightly. "I've seen how they look at us," he continued. "How they talk when they think I can't hear." Finally, her voice, quiet, cracked, came out. "I don't think you're a fool." Elijah froze. It was the first time he'd heard her speak. She added, "I think you're the first person who saw me," and didn't turn away. His voice softened. "Why do you hide your face?" Leah looked down at her hand. "My mother told me to cover it after my father died. She said beauty brings danger, that people don't see the soul, only the surface." She paused. "And sometimes beauty is a curse of its own." Elijah didn't speak, but something shifted in him. That night he ordered that no one disturb her. No questions, no stares, no judgments, just peace. But peace was rare in that place, because deep in the castle walls, someone was watching. Judith, a noblewoman, elegant, cruel. She had always wanted Elijah for herself, and now this strange, veiled girl had taken his attention. Judith's lips curled. "She'll regret ever stepping foot here," she whispered to herself. The days passed, and Leah remained quiet. She wandered the gardens in the early morning, when the mist still clung to the trees. She read by the window, always far from the others, and every night she prayed in silence, hands together, eyes closed. But Elijah watched her from afar. He saw how the wind lifted her veil just slightly sometimes, and in those brief moments, he caught a glimpse, a smooth jawline, a delicate cheek, eyes that shimmered like water under sunlight. She wasn't cursed, she wasn't ugly, she was breathtaking, but she didn't know it. Or maybe she didn't want anyone else to know. One night, Elijah approached her again. "Leah," he said softly, "why do you still hide?" Her voice trembled. "Because I am safer unseen." He took a breath. "Would you let me see you, just once?" She turned to him. "I'm not ready," she said. "But when I am, you'll be the first to know." Elijah nodded, and that was enough, but not for Judith. She watched them from behind the curtain. Each word between them was a knife in her pride. That same night she went to the king, Elijah's father, a man of wealth, age, and iron heart, a man who believed in power, not love. "She's tricking him," Judith said. "She's after the royal fortune, the estate, the investments." The king's eyes narrowed. "Has Elijah given her anything?" "No," Judith answered, "but he's changed, and it's because of her." The next morning, the king summoned Elijah. "You bought a woman like a fool," he snapped. "For $1 million in silver." Elijah didn't flinch. "She was worth every coin." "Worth it?" The king laughed. "She has no name, no family, no title. You risk our name for a stranger in rags?" "I risk nothing," Elijah said firmly. "I protect a soul who never knew kindness." The king's voice dropped. "If she's still here by the end of the week, you'll lose your right to the throne." Elijah didn't answer, but deep in his chest, his heart burned. He returned to Leah that evening, and for the first time, he looked uncertain. She saw it in his eyes. "What happened?" He hesitated, then told her, every word. Leah stood still, then said something he never expected. "Send me away." Elijah shook his head. "No. If I stay, you lose everything," she said. "I don't want that." He stepped closer. "I'd rather lose the throne than lose you." Silence fell between them. Then Leah whispered, "Then you deserve to see what no one else has." And slowly, she lifted her veil. Elijah gasped. She was radiant, not just beautiful, but full of life, light, and sorrow. A face shaped by struggle, yet untouched by hate. I'm Leah," she said, smiling for the first time. "And this is the face I've been hiding, because no one ever asked who I was beneath it." Elijah took her hand and made a promise. No more hiding. But outside the door, someone had heard everything. Judith. Her plan had failed, and now she would do something far worse. The days turned heavy. Rumors spread through the estate like fire in dry fields. "The prince has fallen for a witch. She cast a spell on him. She's after the inheritance." But Elijah didn't care. He walked beside Leah now, openly. Her veil was gone, and every time someone stared, he stared back harder. No one dared speak to her with disrespect, not while he was near. But the pressure grew. The king refused to see Elijah. Letters from the royal council came, one after another. "You are risking everything," they warned. "Your land, your rights, even the kingdom's alliances." Elijah tossed the papers into the fire. "They care more about banks and power than about truth," he muttered. One night, Leah found him in the stables, alone. He was quiet, shoulders tense. "I've never seen you like this," she said gently. "I don't know how to fix it," he answered. "If I stay with you, I lose everything they built for me." She looked down. "If you regret buying me," he turned quickly. "Don't you ever say that." She nodded slowly. "I just want you to be free, Elijah. Free to choose, even if it's not me." But Elijah stepped closer. "I already chose. The day I saw you in that cage, I chose." Then he held her hand. But time was running out. The council had set a date. If Elijah didn't renounce Leah by then, they would strip him of everything: title, land, inheritance. Judith smiled behind closed doors. Everything was falling into place. But then, something unexpected happened. Leah disappeared, vanished without a trace. No note, no goodbye. The servants searched. The guards searched. Elijah, he went mad with worry. Days passed. No sign. He barely ate, barely slept. Until one night, a letter arrived. Handwritten. "Elijah, I left not because I stopped loving you, but because I do. You gave me something I never had. Dignity. Now I must learn to live with it, on my own. If I stay, I destroy your future. So I'm freeing you, the same way you once freed me." Tears blurred his vision. He held the letter close, pressing it to his chest. But something didn't feel right. The way the words were written, too careful, too unlike her. Then he remembered. Leah had once said she never learned to write properly. The letter was a lie. Someone had taken her. Elijah didn't sleep that night. He gathered every guard, questioned every servant, paced the hallways like a lion locked in a cage. "Who sent this?" he demanded, holding the letter. "Who saw her last?" No one answered, but an old kitchen maid finally stepped forward, trembling. She was near the back gate, just before sunset. She looked afraid. Someone was with her. "Who?" Elijah's voice thundered. The woman hesitated. "I think it was Lady Judith's servant." Everything stopped. Judith. He rushed to her chamber, kicked the doors open. She stood by the mirror, brushing her hair, calm, smiling. "Where is she?" Elijah growled. "I don't know who you're talking about," Judith said sweetly, her voice like poison in honey. "Don't lie to me." She turned to face him. "I saved you. She was going to ruin you. The banks are already watching. The council too. You're drowning in debt because of her." "You took her?" Judith stepped closer. "She doesn't belong here, Elijah. I do. I've stood by your side all these years. Do you think love is enough to hold up an empire?" His fists clenched. She whispered, "Choose me, and I'll bring her back. Safe, untouched." He stared at her, and then he walked away without a word, straight to the stables. He mounted his horse and rode into the night, through mud and cold, an endless road. He didn't know where he was going, but his heart knew. He searched every village, every path, until he found a merchant, one who remembered seeing a veiled woman, frightened, being led into a carriage, south. The trail led to a small fortress at the edge of a forgotten river, a place where nobles hid secrets they didn't want the world to see. He waited until nightfall, then climbed the stone wall with nothing but a dagger and fire in his eyes. Inside, in a locked room, Leah sat on the floor, her hands tied, her eyes swollen. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. The door creaked. She looked up and gasped. "Elijah?" He dropped to his knees beside her. I'm here. Tears poured from her eyes. I thought I'd never see you again." He cut her ropes gently. "I'll never let them touch you again." Suddenly, footsteps. A guard opened the door. Elijah grabbed Leah's hand. "Run!" They dashed through the corridors. Guards shouted. Swords clashed. But Elijah moved like a man possessed. They reached the horse. He lifted her up, climbed behind her, and rode into the dark. Rain poured down, but it didn't matter. They were free, soaked, exhausted, alive. When they returned to the estate, the storm was still falling. Leah's hair clung to her skin. Elijah carried her through the doors like she was made of glass. The servants gasped. Some cried. They had feared she was gone forever. Elijah didn't speak to anyone. He brought her to his own chamber, lit the fire, wrapped her in blankets. She looked up at him, weak. "I didn't want to be saved," she whispered. "I just wanted you to be safe." He kneeled beside her. "I'm only safe with you." The next morning, the kingdom woke to news. The prince had risked his life for the woman everyone once called cursed. Judith was gone. No one knew where she fled. But the king, he was furious. He stormed into the estate, demanded to see Leah. Elijah met him outside the chamber. "She's not a prisoner anymore," he said. "She's free. And if you want to speak to her, you'll ask with respect." The king's face turned red. "You've humiliated us." "I saved her," Elijah said. "And in doing so, I saved myself." The king looked past him, saw Leah standing silent at the door. No veil, no fear, just calm strength. "She is not a woman of status," the king muttered. Elijah stepped aside. "She is now." And with that, the prince made his choice. Not just with words, but with action. He stood before the court days later, hand in hand with Leah. "I renounce the crown," he declared. "I choose love over titles, truth over lies, soul over gold." Gasps echoed in the room. The council stood frozen. But something strange happened. The people, the same ones who once whispered behind closed doors, now clapped, cheered, even wept. Because in a world ruled by wealth, by banks, by power, they had seen something rare. A man who gave up everything, not for fortune, but for faith. And a woman who never begged for love, but received it anyway. They moved into a modest home at the edge of the city. No more guards, no silk robes, no carriages with golden wheels, but for the first time in their lives, they breathed freely. Elijah worked with his hands now. He helped in the vineyards, woke up before the sun, felt the dirt under his nails and smiled. He was no longer a prince, but he had never felt more like a man. Leah taught children to read. She built a small classroom near the chapel. She told them stories, not about kingdoms, but about strength, about silence, about kindness. One day, a little girl asked, "Is it true you used to be ugly?" Leah laughed. "I was never ugly, sweet one, just unseen." Word spread of the prince who walked away from the throne. People came from far to see them. And though they had little, they gave freely. They taught women how to earn, how to protect themselves, how to grow. They helped men break free from debts and unfair loans from cruel banks. They talked about real wealth, not gold, but grace. But the world outside wasn't always kind. One winter, Elijah fell sick. He lay in bed, pale, coughing. Leah stayed by his side night and day, held his hand, fed him soup, prayed without sleeping. "You gave up everything for me," she whispered. "Now let me give everything to keep you." He smiled, weakly. "I already have everything, because I have you." Days passed. He got worse. And on the 5th night, he closed his eyes, his breath shallow. Leah knelt beside him. "God," she whispered, "don't take him, not yet. We've only just begun." And then he opened his eyes. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, barely audible. "Not without you." They both laughed, through tears. And after weeks, he stood again, weaker, but alive, and stronger in the ways that mattered. From then on, he moved slower, spoke softer, loved deeper. Their love had become something untouchable, not made of fire, but of stone, solid, lasting. And even without titles, without coins, without crowns, They had become royalty in the hearts of the people. Spring returned. The flowers bloomed again near the chapel. Children laughed in Leah's classroom, and Elijah's strength was almost fully restored. But something unexpected came with the changing season. A letter, sealed in red, marked with the royal emblem. Elijah opened it in silence. The king was dying, and he had no heir. The throne was being offered back to him. Leah read the letter beside him. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, she said, "You always knew this moment would come?" He nodded. "They want me back not because they believe in me, but because they need someone the people trust." Leah touched his hand. "And you are that someone. But I don't want that life again," he said quietly. "I don't want to trade peace for power." She looked into his eyes. "Then don't do it for them. Do it for those who never had a voice, for the ones no one sees. Do it for the little girl I used to be." That night, Elijah couldn't sleep. He walked through the town, saw a man sleeping on a bench, a woman arguing with a merchant over the price of bread, a banker locking a door on a home that used to belong to a family. He felt it all, and by morning, he had decided. He returned home to Leah, held her face in his hands. "If I do this, I want you beside me, as my wife, as my queen." She didn't hesitate. "You already had my yes the day you opened that cage." The decision was made, but not everyone would accept it. Old nobles gathered, bitter, afraid, angry that a veiled girl from nowhere would one day wear a crown. Whispers filled the halls again. "She's unworthy. She's a danger to the kingdom's legacy. She has no noble blood." But this time, Leah wasn't afraid. She stood tall, spoke clearly. "I don't come from riches. I carry no famous name, but I have something more powerful than lineage. I have seen pain, and I still chose kindness." And the people remembered. They remembered the woman who taught their children, the man who gave up everything and never once asked for pity. And the tide began to turn. The coronation day arrived. Clouds loomed over the capital. The wind was restless. Inside the palace, everything shimmered with gold. Silk banners, trumpets, crowds packed into every corner. But behind the grandeur, tension cracked the walls. Elijah stood in the grand hall, dressed in white. Not royal robes, just white. Leah stood beside him in a simple gown. No crown on her head, no jewels around her neck, but the way she carried herself. She needed no crown. A man from the council approached. "You still have time to change your mind," he said. "She can't be queen. Choose anyone else, and the banks will support you. The nobles will stay loyal. You'll be rich again." Elijah looked him in the eye and said nothing, just turned and took Leah's hand. They walked down the aisle together. The king, now pale and thin, watched from his throne. He coughed as they approached, held up a trembling hand. Elijah kneeled. So did Leah. The old man looked at her, his voice weak. "I've been many things. A king, a father, a fool." He turned to Elijah. "You gave up everything to protect her and gained something I never had. Respect." He placed the crown in Elijah's hands, not on his head, but in his hand. "I give this to you not as my son, but as the man this kingdom needs." Then he reached out and touched Leah's hand. "My apologies for not seeing your worth sooner." Tears filled her eyes. She bowed her head gently. "Thank you." The crowd watched in silence. Then Elijah turned, faced them all. "I will not rule over you. I will walk with you. The days of power without mercy are over." And in one single motion, he placed the crown not on his head, but on Leah's. The room froze. Gasps. Whispers. Then one clap. Then two. Then a roar of hands. The people rose to their feet, tears streaming. smiles blooming, because they saw something that day the world rarely showed. True love, true strength, true royalty. And for the first time in generations, the crown meant something again. Not because of blood, not because of banks, but because of bravery. Elijah kissed Leah's hand, and Leah looked out across the room, not with fear, but with peace, because the girl who once sat inside a cage now stood at the center of a kingdom, and this time she had chosen to be seen. Years passed. The kingdom changed. Under Leah and Elijah's rule, no one was forgotten. Land was returned to the poor. Emprestimos injustos forum cancelados. Children learned more than letters. They learned dignity. The palace opened its doors. No more fear. No more cages. And though some nobles vanished, the people stayed, stronger than ever. Leah never wore heavy jewels. She wore her story instead. And Elijah, he never again wore a crown. He wore a simple ring, hers. Together they built more than a kingdom. They built trust. When Elijah spoke, people listened. When Leah walked through the villages, people smiled. No one whispered, "Curse," anymore. They whispered, "Hope." And every year, on the day they met, they returned to the market square, not to remember the cage, but to remember the moment it opened. They sat with the poor, listened to the silent, helped the unseen, because they knew that true riqueza was never counted in coins, but in compassion, in courage, in love chosen again and again, even when it costs everything. In the royal garden, a young girl played beneath the orange trees. She wore no crown, only wildflowers in her hair. Leah watched her from a distance, smiling. Elijah joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Do you think she'll ever know?" he asked. Leah looked at him softly. "She doesn't need to. She's growing up in a world we never had." And as the sun set behind the hills, they stood in silence. Two souls once broken, now whole. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that true worth isn't in titles or beauty, but in courage and love, then share it. Let others hear about Leah, about Elijah, and about how real power is choosing kindness when the world expects anything but. Leave a comment. Tell us, what would you have done in Elijah's place? And have you ever met someone like Leah? Unseen, but unforgettable. Don't forget to subscribe, because more stories like this one are coming, and they just might change the way you see the world.